In his new podcast and upcoming book, Mobituaries, CBS Sunday Morning correspondent Mo Rocca looks at extraordinary people like Meter, whose names you may not know. Rocca gives them his own version of an obituary, or as he calls it, a Mobit. His book is published by Simon & Schuster, a division of CBS. He also looks at celebrities like Audrey Hepburn and how her death was overshadowed in 1993. She died on the same day as President Clinton's inauguration. Mo, good morning.
Pushed her right off the front page.
Yeah, my goodness.
Good morning.
Why have you decided on obits? Have you always been interested?
I've always loved obits. And, you know, there are people I've long been fascinated by, and I thought they didn't get the send-off they deserved, or they didn't get any send-off at all. So, you know, we're doing episodes on Audrey Hepburn and on Neanderthals. There was never an obituary for Neanderthals when they died out 40,000 years ago. Yeah. So it's a whole range of subjects.
Oh, there have been some around recently.
Right. They've come back. Just come back.
As you say, the obit is really about your life and not really your death, and you're taking a look at that.
Absolutely.
I had never thought of it that way, actually, until you said it.
Exactly. I think a good obituary is about the life of a person, right, rather than their death. And you know, and these are people also that I feel sort of a personal connection to.
Audrey Hepburn, you have a personal connection?
In 1992, I was working at Macy's behind the fragrance counter.
Really?
And I was, yeah. And Audrey Hepburn walked by my counter.
How far you've come.
Yeah.
And Audrey Hepburn walked right by my counter. And I'm telling you, the floor, just the main floor there, it just fell silent. I mean, even if there had been cell phones back there, you never would have shoved your hand in front of her face for a selfie.
So what's something in the Mobituary that we might not know about Audrey Hepburn?
So I wanted to answer the question, why 26 years after her death, does she still trend on Twitter? Why are we still so attached to her? Her career was only about 14 years long. There were stars that were bigger than she was, but she has a hold on us. So we go into her personal history, her war years, and we hypothesize that what you see on camera is really rooted in kind of her childhood and what she went through, and there's something punching through.
And there's the history of the person, of course, but then the times in which they lived, which is rich as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like with Sammy Davis Jr., who, you know, it's axiomatic that he could do it all, and he really could do it all. Just a brilliant entertainer. But that whole era is gone too, where the marketplace appreciated somebody who could do it all because there were variety shows.
I like sitcom deaths and disappearances that I never even thought about this. Remember when you say that you've loved TV since you were a little boy? At 9, you memorized the TV guides.
Right,
that says something about you. The neighbor didn't even know that you existed. You were in TV all the time. But you talk about Chuck Cunningham from Happy Days. He just went upstairs and never came down. The little girl on Family Matters, Judy Winslow, also walked down the aisle in a wedding and just sort of disappeared, and no one ever explained.
Vaporized.
What happened to these people? Yeah.
Well, so on hour-long dramas, you know, people get killed off all the time.
Yeah.
I was on Law & Order Criminal Intent, and I blew up in a car. And on Game of
In a
Thrones,
fedora hat, too, right?
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And Game of Thrones, 70% of the characters get killed off. That's an actual statistic. But in the sitcom universe, people don't die generally. And I talked to Henry Winkler about what happened to Richie Cunningham's older brother, Chuck Cunningham, who was in the first 2 seasons of Happy Days. You would
bouncing a ball.
He would usually be, you know, like dribbling a basketball or eating a sandwich. And Gary Marshall was so good at what he did, the creator of Happy Days, that he decided, you know, the Fonz was becoming so popular. Richie Cunningham would go to the Fonz for advice on dating. So the Fonz became the older brother. And rather than making Chuck Cunningham's disappearance a plot point, he knew that the audience would suspend disbelief enough to just be okay with him just disappearing.
So he just went upstairs to his room.
Yeah, exactly.
And never came down.
Right. He's the relative no one talked about.
He was memorizing the TV guide, apparently.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
You won me over by talking about Aunt Viv, the 2 Aunt Vivs on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So thank you for that. I was a fan of the original, just saying.
Yeah.
Well, right. And if anyone remembers the vexing problem of the 2 Darrens on Bewitched, that's a different kind of disappearance, where an actor disappears.
And the Valerie show, the lead character just sort of disappeared.
Well, they did actually kill her off, Valerie Harper.
She was in a car accident.
Exactly. They killed her off and replaced her character with Sandy Duncan.
And the Mobituaries podcast launches tomorrow, and his book will come out this fall.
Oh.
And on today's CBS This Morning
What do you want to
podcast,
say, Mo? Hurry up. Hurry up.
Gayle!
You have to subscribe.
Hurry
Our
up.
superstar producer, Kate, who's in her 20s, says, tell everybody to subscribe, rate, and review. I don't know what she's talking about, but just do it.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to say that. Okay. Go ahead, Norah.